Hey, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo for Oakridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakridgeFord.com. Employee pricing wraps up at the end of the month, so you've got like 10 days. It is Sunday, September 20th, 2020. I'm Norm, along with Mike. We have the Stanley Cup Finals up and running. Dallas up 1-0 over Tampa. I still have the Lightning to take it, but Anton Khudobin, Mike, an absolute beast in the opener. And then Alex Pietrangelo looks like he's headed for free agency. The guy the Maple Leafs need on the back end. How are you, buddy?
Good afternoon, Norm. I'm well. It's a sunny and chilly day in Western New York. Good football weather.
Yep.
There's the Pietrangelo situation, or Petrangelo. I always butcher his name, even though I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Paisan. Um, I look at this situation, and it's sort of fallen into the lap of the teams that are looking to make an impact on defense. Now, it's going to cost those teams,
Mm-hmm.
no doubt. We saw from the reports from Darren Drager and Pierre LeBrun and Jeremy Rutherford from the Athletic that essentially, and I thought this was going to happen because you saw the groundwork being laid during the season when Doug Armstrong, the Blues general manager, traded for Justin Falk, traded for Marco Scandella, signed them both to extensions, and that they were going to take a hard line and sort of play on the heartstrings of
Mm-hmm.
Petrangelo to take a hometown discount. And based on what Rutherford reported, they offered him a deal less than $8 million and possibly would have come up to 8. But that's lowball. That's not what he's looking for, and they wouldn't discuss the structure of the contract, be it signing bonus or term. So it sounds like the Blues are interested, but only at their price. And this is the prize of free agency. And even in a economy of the NHL affected by COVID, the players who are the top players in free agency are going to get the top money. It's not going to stop them. And it's an opportunity for a number of teams, including the Maple Leafs, to sort
Mm-hmm.
of pony up and
Yep.
offer the offer that can get Petrangelo to come to their city.
This cat wants to get paid. He's one of the preeminent defensemen, not only about to hit the market, but playing the game today. Who can blame him? If the Blues can't pay him, though, how are the Maple Leafs going to unravel the bank account and open it up and lay it at the feet of this guy?
Well, I mean, we've discussed it a number of times, and it even though the indications are that Kyle Dubas does not want to break up the core four forwards, there really is no option here. If they're going to go after Petrangelo, and first thing they have to do is find out
Mm-hmm.
whether it's feasible. There have been reports that say he would come to Toronto, he would go to Vegas. There's a couple other teams that are interested that he would go to. It's all a question of
Mm-hmm.
how much money they can offer over a number of years. The Leafs have about a little over $6 million in cap space right now. They have Ilya Mikheyev and Travis Dermott as restricted free agents that they have to sign, but they have players that they can trade to open up space. And obviously, if you're going to sign a defenseman like Petrangelo and he's going to ask for market value, which is likely over Oliver Ekman-Larsson's $8.25 million, or probably closer to what PK Subban is making, which is 9, then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to clear a significant chunk. And they're not trading Tavares at 11. They're not trading Matthews at 11.6. They're not going to trade Marner coming off what I think he would even deem and admit himself was a disappointing year, but it's a heavy signing bonus contract with almost $11 million. They're not going to trade him, and they probably couldn't get full value for him. The guy is Nylander.
Mm-hmm.
They can't open up enough cap space by trading Andreas Janssen or trading even Andreas Janssen and Alex Kerfoot, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have depth problems. The answer is if you're going to sign Petrangelo, you're probably going to have to trade Nylander to open up the cap space. But first things first, you get to find out whether you can get Petrangelo to come to Toronto, and then I'm sure you lay the groundwork, if it is possible, to trade Nylander and open up the cap space.
It's clear if Petrangelo isn't interested in signing with the Blues at the money they feel is comfortable, then he's going to a team that pays him the most money. He knows his status in the game. He's got that ring. He's put himself in position, even in these new times that we're all conforming to. On Marner, a lot of Leaf fans who dislike him and are in love with 88 think that Marner's biggest problem is the contract that Kyle Dubas signed him to. Well, if it's a problem for the Maple Leafs, wouldn't it be a problem for another team as well? There are some things you can't get out of and other things that you can get out of. Nylander, is he as good a player all around as Mitch Marner? I don't think so. Pound for pound, based on the dollar figure these guys are bringing in, it's a more concrete. It's a more. Let's just say it's a better argument. But sorry, Mike. The byproduct of that is if Nylander produces to his contract and his contract makes sense, it's easier to move, and that's the shitty part for a lot of fans, and that's the difficulty of this process that Kyle Dubas is just going to have to accept and overcome.
I mean, Marner's contract is a pricey ticket, but I don't think the Leafs want to get out of that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given him that money. With Nylander, it was structured in a way to basically trade him after a couple of years, because you could see that most of the contract has been front loaded, or the contract that was front loaded in the first couple of years, most of it's signing bonus in the first year. And then after year 2, the remaining 4 years, the cap hit was higher than the actual money paid out. So in this league, with a lot of teams in financial distress, to get a 30-goal scorer at a price point of less than his cap hit, and his cap hit is not onerous at under $7 million. I mean, let's just say this: if they decide they're going after Pietrangelo, they're going to bid in the $8.5 to $9 million range to sign him on a long-term deal, and they have to trade Nylander. They will lay the groundwork with other teams who are interested, saying, "What are you going to offer me?" And they won't pull the trigger until they make the signing. And that's the way things work. But it's not like they're going to be hard-pressed to get a good return for Nylander. 30-goal scorers don't grow on trees. There are a lot of teams out there that have trouble generating offense. A team like New Jersey has 3 first-round picks. I'm sure that they would be interested in a guy like Nylander to play with Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier, and that's just one of a number of teams. So I don't think the Leafs would have any trouble getting a very good return, meaning draft picks and cheap prospects. And that would help them in terms of the cap. That would help them in terms of the depth of the organization. And obviously reallocating money towards the defense, which is the area they need to address more than anything, has been what I've been advocating the last 3 years.
How do we have this conversation without listeners feeling like we're wanting to ditch Nylander? I'd love for the guy to stay. I think he's a terrific player. If the Leafs had $150 million every year to spend on salaries, it would be great to have him and a whole bunch of other high-paid talent. But is Mitch Marner not more of the complete kind of guy that you want and that you'd expect to earn his keep at all of that money? I mean, he is a 200-foot player, all 3 zones. He does a lot more on the ice completely than most players who are out there with him, and frankly, most players in the NHL. He had a really good statistical season, but it still wasn't enough. That tells me that more is expected of him, and I mean, he's paid accordingly. So he wasn't signed to a contract that the organization knew was easily movable. And you've mentioned, and we all know, that 88 is certainly a guy who's earning his keep, and his keep isn't all that much when it comes to how it fits into the salary cap equation for the Maple Leafs and how it might be able to fit into another team's payment structure. This is the Leafs Convo for Oakridge Ford. I'm Norm, along with Mike. True story. Last week, Mike, we had someone come into the dealership and ask for you.
Were they trying to serve me with papers or something?
No. I think they wanted to buy a car or a truck using Ford employee pricing because they know that it's about to expire. So this collision of huge discount and low interest rate is happening, and it's about to end, and buyers are emerging and entering facility looking for the one and only Mike Augello to provide them with vehicle. Yet you're in Western New York and we're in Ontario, and you don't have your license to sell vehicles. So that's a difficult situation. And he didn't
Yeah,
he didn't buy because you weren't there. You know what I need is like a cardboard cutout of you at my desk.
yeah, and believe me, I haven't been in Canada in 6 months. I'm going through withdrawal symptoms. So
The next time someone comes and asks for you, I'll just say he's stuck at the border.
there you go.
Arish in community. Thoughts on Petrangelo going to UFA? Does he take a discount to come to the Maple Leafs? Absolutely not. That's proven by his conversations with St. Louis.
No, but here's where the Leafs have an advantage. And one thing I have to say, Brian Burke broke this down really good on the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast regarding the advantages that teams that are in non-tax states in the U.S. have. Dallas and Tampa, obviously in the Stanley Cup final, they're both in no-tax states. Vegas was in a no-tax state. Nashville, the Florida Panthers, also they have advantages over teams like Toronto with high taxes in Ontario, or Montreal with high taxes in Quebec. Where the Leafs their advantage is in terms of their financial might, being able to offer front-loaded deals and heavy signing bonus where teams. So other teams may not want to do that. If you look at the contracts of Tavares and Marner and Matthews, it's basically the base salary is under $1 million, and every one of them is a signing bonus of like 15 or 13 or whatever, graduated throughout the contract. And Muzzin and Nylander are very similar in terms of heavy signing bonus and low base salary. And I think based on the tax implications in Ontario, that the bonuses are taxed differently than the base salaries. So that's an advantage in terms of the Leafs being able to offer Pietrangelo a heavy signing bonus laden deal, a contract with a no move clause, which apparently St. Louis wasn't interested in giving him as well. So that is their advantage. Now, other teams may do that. Vegas might do that. I've heard rumors of the Boston Bruins being interested in Pietrangelo, and wouldn't that be a kick in the teeth if the guy that we've been focusing on goes to the Leafs' arch rival? I mean, I don't think the Leafs can be,
Wow.
can bid things up just for that purpose, but it would be fairly hurtful to see him playing in the black and gold instead of the blue and white, especially when that's the type of player they desperately need.
Corey Parrish is asking in community, is Kyle Dubas almost obligated to make an aggressive offer on Petrangelo?
I think he's obligated in terms of the fact that he wants to do the best thing to make this team as good a team as possible. I mean, the reality here is that he only has so much cap space to work with. And, there are other ways that they can open up cap space if they trade Frederik Andersen and bring in a cheaper goaltender, but that doesn't sound like it's conducive to upgrading in goal, like they've said, or doing a repeat of what they did with the David Clarkson deal last year, acquiring him from Vegas simply to put him on long-term injury to open up cap space. That would be a temporary situation. If they went out and traded for like an injured player like Brandon Dubinsky or Marian Gaborik, it would open up cap space for 1 year. But, in the end, that was just delaying the inevitable. If you added Petrangelo and you go out and trade for somebody to open up cap space via LTIR, next year you're going to have the same problem with having probably to trade Nylander or not being able to bid on Anderson or Zach Hyman as free agents. So one way or the other, the Leafs are going to have to make a decision, whether they go for Pietrangelo or they go for other defensemen on the market. They need to bolster their defense, and I think there are very few options in the free agent market, and Pietrangelo is the best.
Yeah, need more cowbell. If they added almost nothing to the scoring end of things, who are to stay at home and keep the pucks out of the net defensemen the Leafs should acquire?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Radko Gudas, and I would be in favor of Radko Gudas, but obviously we're talking about a completely different class of defenseman next. Petrangelo is a top pairing guy to play with Morgan Riley, and Gudas is probably a bottom pairing defenseman, and he's probably going to cost in the neighborhood of $3 million a year. So yeah, I think that's, they may be willing to do that if they have to add him and somebody else, but I think their money is better spent on a linchpin top four defenseman like Petrangelo. But Gudas is one name. Honestly, in terms of an impact top four blue liner, I don't see anybody else in this free agent class. I mean, one of the best righties is Tyson Barrie, so that should tell you something. So I think the avenue in terms of adding that top four defenseman, if it's not Pietrangelo, it's probably via trade. It's a Dumba. It's a Aaron Ekblad if he's truly available in Florida. Maybe there's one or two others out there, but it's slim pickings. But it was always going to be costly for the Leafs to get this player because it's very important. He's a right-hand shot top pairing defenseman is as important to this team as a number one or number two center.
Yeah, he's the guy. And thanks to his valuation of himself or overvaluation of himself and the Blues holding a hard line based on where they are financially and having a Stanley Cup in the bank now, this guy is going to make himself present on the market. And he's the exact guy that a lot of people believe the Leafs not only could use, but need to take that next step forward. But Mike, you also know there's a faction of Leafs supporters or watchers of the game, purported experts, depending on who you ask, who would say that Petrangelo's probably more wasted money and that the way the Leafs are doing it right now will bear fruit at some point. Just draft talented defensemen with projected upside who will at some point jump into the mix and be led to a Stanley Cup by William Nylander and his sidekick Austin Matthews.
Well, Rasmus Sandin is possibly going to be in the top 6 of this organization next year. He's an excellent prospect. He started the World Juniors. He's well beyond where a lot of people thought he was going to be at 20 years old. He was drafted 2 years ago. It's not realistic for defensemen being drafted to just step into the NHL. It takes 3-4 years of development. And if you draft somebody in this upcoming draft with that 15th pick, more than likely he's not going to be on the Leafs roster until 2022 or 2023 at the earliest. And then you're talking about, the last year or two of Austin Matthews' contract. So the only way that they're going to add defensemen who can help them win in the next 2 or 3 years is by trading for them or signing them as a free agent. It's not to say you shouldn't continue to try to develop defensemen because that's a necessary step that you have to take with any organization. You have to develop and you have to add by trade and add by free agency. But to solely depend on internally improving is not going to go. This team has to add and improve on the blue line now for them to win now.
OG's Converts, if you are one of us and you haven't subscribed yet, can you hit the subscribe button? Especially if you're on YouTube, just hit that button. And, we don't spam you. We don't send out too much garbage. It's just an indication once or twice, maybe 3 times a week, depending on what's going on, when we produce content. Subscribe. We have tons of listeners. I mean, we're hitting big numbers like we did during last year's Stanley Cup run, pre-COVID for sure. It's just not reflected in the way that our subscribership is crawling along. So I'd like to see if we can get that on track. Please, it would mean a lot to us. Mike and I are in this for the long haul. I know you guys are as well. Hit the subscribe button and like this content as well. Even if you dislike it, no problem. That shows that you are interacting with it. So, Mike, we have a few things that we have to be prepared for. The cost of Petrangelo, the Leafs' ability to move money out and put themselves in position to accommodate that cost, and whether this young man from King City, from the GTA, Toronto guy, wants to join the Maple Leafs. Does he look at the Leafs and say to himself, those are the St. Louis Blues 2.0, and that's the team I need to go to? All the other stuff just falls into place for me. Or does he think, you know what? That team is more than just me away from taking a big step. I want to get paid. And I'd also like to go somewhere else where I can win. And the Leafs just aren't that team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the general consensus throughout the league is that the Leafs, are a contending team, and they're, unlike a lot of organizations in the next couple of years, are willing to spend up to the cap to do that. So I think that that's encouraging. They see the talent there with Tavares and Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Morgan Riley, and they see a group that maybe is a player or two away. Now, I know we're going to talk about the Stanley Cup final. If you look at the two teams that are in the final right now, one of the keys to them getting there has been their general managers, Jim Nill for the Stars and Julian Breezeball for Tampa Bay, adding on veteran players on low contracts to be depth players. And I think that's another thing that Kyle Dubas is likely going to be doing, especially in a market where there's going to be a ton of free agents and a lot of players just looking for a place to play next year. We talked about Wayne Simmons on a previous convo. Yep. And a player like that at a $750,000 league minimum contract is similar to Patrick Maroon going to Tampa Bay, or Kevin Shattenkirk, or Luke Schenn signing at the beginning of the year, or Corey Perry and Andres Sekera getting bought out by Edmonton and Anaheim and then signing a contract with Dallas. The Leafs are a magnet for that because these players have an opportunity to show their wares in the biggest hockey media market, get themselves a new contract, but also play for, if it's in a case of Simmons, his hometown team. They're going to have to, on top of doing what they potentially could do with Pietrangelo, they're going to have to do that as well. And I think Dubas is prepared to do that.
Wouldn't it be something to bring in a Petrangelo and a Simmons and maybe someone else with a little more to prove before they hang up the skates? That, to me, would feel like serious progress forward towards something, a point closer than they are now to winning the Stanley Cup. Bringing in a few also-rans and reclamation projects to bolster this group the way it is, sure, let's see what happens. But I'm not of the belief that would be enough to move the Leafs into a position where they're knocking on the door of a Stanley Cup. Petrangelo on his own, I think it gets them a little closer. But the big piece and a few motivated players to flank them, that to me is change that is necessary and required to do what the Maple Leafs need to do, and that's to seriously contend for a Stanley Cup. But again, going back to the points that you've made and that I've supported, that, look, he needs to want to come here if the money and the situation are agreeable to him. The Leafs have to be able to have that kind of financial might to meet Petrangelo in his camp eye to eye on where he wants to be in terms of salary, and the Leafs also have to be able to move some pieces in order to sort of open the door for Petrangelo to come in. So a lot of things at play. What's exciting, though, is that the type of defenseman that we've all been wanting the Maple Leafs to go after seems to be about to showcase himself in a market in which the Maple Leafs can flex some serious muscle. It's just a matter of time, and we have to see if everything kind of shakes out in the favor of the Maple brothers. Mike Rushton, what about Luke the Eraser Schenn on the bottom pairing? He brings some toughness and grit.
Yeah, I'm happy for Luke Schenn because, I mean, he's the last few years has been a journeyman. I think Anaheim. I think he played in Vancouver for a little bit, now Tampa, and he's basically a seventh defenseman and penalty killer. And if I really have no rooting interest in the series, Tampa or Dallas, but I wouldn't mind seeing Luke Schenn carrying around the
doubt.
Cup. I think he was mishandled by the Leafs early on, rushed into the NHL at 18 years old, and I think he could have been a much better and much more well-rounded player had they been more patient with him. And but he did end up getting traded to Philadelphia, and they got Van Riemsdyk for him, which is a deal that Brian Burke won. But yeah, I'd like to see him win.
I forget which year it would have been, Mike. 07, 08. I think Ron Wilson was coach. Schenn had given the puck away, or he fanned on a shot, or there was something happening in his own end, and he made an adequate play, and the fans sarcastically cheered him. And Pierre Maguire was doing the Canadian broadcast back then. And he said, that's just terrible of the Leaf fans to do. Just awful. Now, this guy, clearly a Montreal-centric broadcaster, had the week before praised the Habs fans for being so in tune to the game and so connected to hockey and so passionate that when they boo, it means something. But when the Leaf fans did the same thing, it was mean-spirited. That was the last real memory I had of Luke Schenn. And that's too bad because he came on the scene and, he was a guy that the Leafs had hoped would produce for them. And when I say produce, I mean not really produce, prohibit the opposition from producing. But that's the image I have of Luke Schenn, that those moments where broadcasters, we didn't necessarily like that much because they didn't really tell the truth without it being skewed or weighed in emotion or favoritism. We're coming to the defense of this guy because his hometown fans, were on him so terribly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it was after. I bet it was probably in 2009 or 2010 because in his rookie year, he was hitting everything in sight. The fans were fairly supportive of him. I just think about this, though. And you look at if you're watching the Stanley Cup final, that 2008 draft where Stamkos was number 1 and Drew Doughty was number 2. The third pick is playing on the Tampa Bay defense and Zach Bogosian, and he's had pretty much a disappointing career after being traded from Winnipeg. Been injured a lot, but he's playing pretty well for Tampa right now. But he's making like $1 million, so it's a good value contract. The 4th overall pick was Pietrangelo, so 1 pick ahead of Luke Schenn. So it shows. You have to consider Schenn a miss now at a number 5 pick, even though I think there are extenuating circumstances there. But how much would that have changed the future of the Maple Leafs had it been Schenn taken 4th by St. Louis and had it been Petrangelo going to the Leafs at 5?
Patrick Goulet community, should the Leafs even go for a big name free agent with Kyle Dubas negotiating? And considering they probably wouldn't be in such a bad position had they never signed Tavares. Poor Tavares has come to Toronto and delivered in every aspect, and he'll never live down someone else's decision.
I am so tired of this narrative because honestly, it's like, okay, everybody was celebrating the fact that Tavares took the contract and signed with his hometown team, and now he's the fault of everything that is wrong with the Leafs right now. The fault is not Tavares signing here. The fault was succumbing in the Nylander negotiations because that gave carte blanche to the agents of Matthews and Marner to ask for top dollar. They should have told Nylander, take a bridge deal, or you're going to take this, or if you want to go play in Sweden for your be my guest, or traded them, and that would have told Marner and Matthews you're going to take. That's what other organizations have done. They have a hard line towards players. They either get the player to take what they want, take a bridge deal, or take less. And instead, the Leafs succumbed. They gave Nylander almost $7 million a year.
They capitulated, Mike.
They capitulated, and then they capitulated. I think they had to sign Matthews for what he got, and he's worth every dollar. But it put them in a bad situation with the Marner negotiations, and it forced them to probably pay Marner $1 million or $2 million more than he should be making. But that's negotiations. Yeah. So, you can blame Dubas, you can blame Tavares, but I think it's a series of things. But I think the big mistake was the Nylander signing.
We're blaming Tavares for the money that he deserves and he's producing. Are we blaming Nylander? We're blaming Marner. We're blaming. Everybody gets the blame. I don't know. Maybe had these guys come together and dominated the way we thought they should have, they may not have won a Stanley Cup by now, but they'd be a lot closer than where they currently sit. And that's, not playing. They lost in the first round again. So whose fault is it? I don't know. Maybe the guys just haven't been good enough. They were supposed to be. It's everybody's fault, for God's sake. Come on now. Real quick before we go, Stanley Cup final. That was a great opener from Dallas's perspective. Sure, they were outshot, and you're typically going to be outshot when you're the Dallas Stars. But the goaltender came through. You get goals from guys like Jamie Oleksiak. They're up 1-0 in the series and 3 wins away from their second Stanley Cup championship.
Well, I picked Tampa in 7 because I thought that Tampa would be slowed down by the injuries to Braden Point, who didn't look like he was the Braden Point that is one of the best players in the league. I think he's hurt significantly and he's missed some games. And Anthony Cirelli got hurt in the Islanders series, and Stamkos, I think, is being used more as a decoy right now than a legitimate chance of him playing in the playoffs. But I still thought that Tampa, with their depth of talent, would be able to beat Dallas. But I mean, if Dallas plays like last night, it's going to be very tough for them to do. I mean, the one thing is, in the third period, Dallas was completely defensive, and Tampa, I think, outshot them like 20-2, and Khudobin was superb. So if you get that kind of goaltending, then Dallas is going to win. But eventually, I think he's got to come down a little bit. And if that happens, then Tampa, I think, has superior talent to win that series.
Joel Hanley opened the Stanley Cup Finals with his first of the playoffs for Dallas. I mean, that's the kind of contribution a team like Dallas isn't necessarily expecting, but is useful. And Jason Dickinson scored his first of the Stanley Cup playoffs in Game 1 of the final. I mean, Dallas just quiet and unassuming and there. And they're there, Mike. And that's, again, it's interesting in that a team like this, not really flashy, but just workmanlike and structured properly, is in a position to do something that these flashier teams with all of this financial might and all of these big shot, big name players just can't get to. Last point to you.
Well, I'll just say this, bringing it back to the Leafs, on either the Lightning or the Dallas Stars, I don't see a player like Freddie Gauthier, and I don't see a player like Martin Marincin. The depth on their organizations, Joel Hanley is a better defenseman than Martin Marincin, and Blake Como is a better forward as a fourth liner than Freddie Gauthier. I think that the Leafs, if they want to get as far as these teams do, they have to have depth of talent and not just players who take up space. They need players who can play an effective role. And I don't think Marincin or Gauthier should be on this roster next year.
Let's get rid of Marincin and Gauthier, and we're bringing Pietrangelo, Simmons, Shen, Gudis, and Calle Johansson. I think we're good.
Not all but Calle Johansson. I can think of a few others.
Are the Blue Jays going to win the American League Championship this year?
Not giving up 19 home runs in 3 games.
That's a fun team to watch, Mike. And I like what they've done with the ballpark there in Buffalo. It does look like the backstop at Rogers Center.
Yeah, I just wish that one of the pitchers would throw high and heavy at the cutout of Andrew Cuomo, because it doesn't belong there.
Not at Geddy Lee, though.
No
way, not at Geddy Lee. OG's Converse, thank you so much for your support of the podcast. You can catch Mike at hockeybuzz.com and a variety of other publications. He's always on Twitter at Mike in Buffalo. I'm on social media as well at I am Norman James. Ford employee pricing wraps up at the end of the month. Low interest rates plus huge discounts right now until literally the last hour of September 2020, and then who knows what's after that. If you're thinking about a new vehicle, in particular a Ford, in particular a truck or whatever, you can reach out to me in community. And you can book an appointment with Mike too. You never know. I'll get him to do something over the phone. Mike, take it easy, buddy.
Thanks, Norm.